Hey guys. Welcome to Secrets Behind the Stars. Settle in, because everything you've been wondering is right here, and if you want more stories like this, make sure you hit subscribe and share before we dive deeper. Tonight's spotlight falls on a line that set social media ablaze, a line that slipped from Cenk Torun's lips with the calm of a confession and the weight of a thunderclap. He sat there under the studio lights, careful but candid, and began a sentence that rippled through the entire entertainment world. 10 years ago with Mahassine, he stopped. He changed the subject. He smiled, but it wasn't the effortless smile we see in his roles. It was the look of a man who had wandered back into a room he once locked, found everything exactly where he had left it, and chose to leave the door ajar instead of shutting it again. Was Cenk pointing to Mahassine Merabet? The question didn't just float, it pierced. For those who remember that unforgettable chapter of primetime history, their names together stir the kind of electricity that screenwriters try to bottle and fans never forget. Years ago, Cenk Torun and Mahassine Merabet shared the frame in a project that became a phenomenon, every episode a fever, every glance its own headline. They went their separate ways when the cameras cut, each carving out success across different paths, yet that shared thread still glows in people's memories like a neon trace in the night. On the show, Cenk didn't hide behind polished anecdotes. He let the past breathe. He talked about the work that shaped him, the decisions that cost him, the days that moved too fast and the nights that slowed everything down, and then, without warning, he reached into the decade-old vault. Mahassine and I were in very different places 10 years ago, he said, and the studio held its breath. He didn't sound regretful. He didn't sound triumphant. He sounded like someone who had finally learned the language of his own history. Respect weighed on every word, the kind that comes after time and distance have done their heavy lifting. That pause after he mentioned her name said more than any confession could. It wasn't a door swinging wide open. It was a window cracking just enough to let the air change. The most striking part wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. There are people who come into your life, but they leave a mark, he added later, and no one could miss the illusion. He spoke about the relentless pace of those days, the way early fame turns the clock into a blur, the on-set current that drags you between the lines you're delivering and the heartbeat you're trying to hear over the noise. He didn't paint their story in grand strokes. He didn't need to. He hinted at the pressure that came with being the faces of a generation's favorite show, at how that pressure presses you together and pushes you apart at the same time. Two co-stars, yes, but also two young people navigating a storm that only they truly felt in the same way. Naturally, all eyes turned to Mahassine. Would she respond? Would she add a page? Close the book? As of filming, there was no statement from her lips, but the whispers from her circle suggested calm, not chaos. She has always moved like someone who knows the value of both presence and restraint. Those who know her say she sees the past as a complete painting, precious, finished, and admired from a respectful distance. The idea isn't to start a new series with old scenes, but to keep the frame on the wall where it belongs. She has always honored the work and the people who built it with her, and this time appears no different. To her, the moment felt less like a fuse and more like a photograph, the kind you touch once in a while, then slide back into its sleeve and carry on. Of course, a sentence like 10 years ago with Mahassine is a gift to the rumor mill. Some voices insist Cenk was simply recalling an intense era with a trace of tenderness, sharing a memory the way one shares sunlight in a dark room. Others are convinced he deliberately left the thought dangling to spark speculation and conversation. Online, the fandom split neatly in two, those who whisper, imagine them together again, one more project, one more scene, and those who answer, the past was beautiful, the present is peaceful, let it stay that way. Both sides are loud, but somewhere in the middle there's a quiet hum of acceptance, the recognition that the best stories don't always need a sequel. Maybe he'll never finish that sentence. Maybe it was never meant to be finished. But it already did its work. It reminded us that a decade doesn't erase the fingerprints of certain moments. A single line reopened rooms in our heads that time had kindly tidied up. It proved once again that some pairs aren't just on-screen chemistry, they're cultural weather. A breeze from 10 years ago can still sway today's trees. That's what Cenk's words did. They stirred the branches. They carried us back without dragging us under. They showed how memory, when framed with grace, can be less of a wound and more of a window. Within hours, every entertainment page had spun the spotlight toward him, dissecting the phrasing, the timing, the angle of his smile. The sentence that started with 10 years ago with Mahassine turned into a doorway to the past for many, and for others, a mirror reflecting everything we once wondered but never heard said out loud. People reread his career with fresh eyes, compared interviews, connected dots that may never have been meant to meet. Sources close to him talk about timing now, how the clock changes the way memory sits in the body. In his 20s, success came like a flash flood, talent, visibility, applause, deadlines, all of it pouring in at once. Even your feelings get scheduled, he joked softly, but not without truth. It's only now, they say, that he understands how speed can bend emotion into strange shapes, and how time, given enough patience, straightens those contours into something honest. That decade, it seems, was not just about achievements. It was about learning how to carry them. When he thinks of the years with Mahassine at the height of the show, he thinks of a turning point, not a headline. The collaboration wasn't merely professional. It was a hinge that quietly swung open a different door in his life, a door that led to resilience, to clarity, to knowing what to hold and what to let pass through his hands without claiming it. Some people romanticize those early years, but he resists that urge. He doesn't sand down the edges. He doesn't glow up the shadows. He tries to remember them as they were, intense, demanding, magical, exhausting. True. Days after the taping, the conversation refuses to dim. New interpretations appear, soft debriefs from those who were on set back then, almost confessions that never quite land. The buzz suggests that the omission in Cenk's words was not a slip, it was a shelter. He has kept his personal life carefully guarded for years, a choice that requires discipline in a world built on disclosure. Protecting what mattered then, and what matters now, doesn't mean denying it ever existed, it means giving it the dignity of quiet. Friends hint that when he revisits that time, he focuses on the lesson rather than the ache. Early fame, he believes, ages you fast. It asks you to feel before you know how, to decide before you're ready, to carry emotions while a crew counts down from 10 and a director waves for silence. That's the tightrope they walk together, he and Mahassine, with an audience on both sides of the line and a story to tell every week without fail. Through it all, Mahassine's silence speaks the way only hers can. Those close to her say she considers that chapter a complete story, beautiful, finished, cherished, not to be edited for the sake of today's appetite. Her focus is where her feet are now. She has built a life, a career, and a voice that doesn't need nostalgia to sound rich. That doesn't erase the past, it honors it by refusing to carve it into clickbait. She's careful with memory the way one is careful with fine fabric. You touch it with clean hands and keep it away from sharp edges. That's why the quiet is louder than a rebuttal. It aligns with every choice she has made when pressed to revisit old roads. She smiles, she acknowledges, and she keeps walking. As the chatter grows, so do the behind-the-scenes recollections from those hectic years. The writer's room where plot twists raced the clock. The makeup chair where fatigue became a joke and eyeliner hid more than a long night. The call sheets that read like marathon routes. And the constant awareness that eyes were everywhere, waiting, judging, loving, debating. Expectations were sky high, the stakes even higher. That storm forged them both, even if it also sent them down separate paths once the umbrella folded. No wonder Cenk anchored his thought in 10 years ago. It wasn't a throwaway timestamp. It was a way of saying, we were young, and the weather was wild, and we learned to dance in the downpour. So what happens now? Maybe nothing, and maybe that's the point. Maybe the gift is the reminder that not every shared past needs a present tense answer. Sometimes a half-finished sentence is an act of care. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do with a memory is to hold it at arm's length and nod. The story can remain intact without being reopened. And yet, if you listen closely to the public's heartbeat, you can hear the rhythm splitting. Nostalgia pulsing on one side, acceptance on the other. The dreamers imagine Cenk and Mahassine trading lines again, the camera catching that old charge like lightning striking twice. The realists say their journeys are rich precisely because they didn't loop back. Both can be true. Both, in their own way, honor what was. Back in the studio, the lights cooled, and the crew began to pack up. But the echo of Cenk's voice stayed put. It lingered on the set pieces, in the corners where laughter had bounced and hesitation had held. It clung to the lens. It reminded everyone who works in this world that a story's power doesn't always come from plot twists or dramatic reveals, sometimes it lives in restraint. The choice not to say more can be the most eloquent thing you say. And when a name like Mahassine's floats through a quiet room, it brings with it the soft thunder of a time people still feel in their bones. Here at Secrets Behind the Stars, we'll keep watching how this unfolds, or gently doesn't. We'll listen for what's said and respect what isn't. We'll remember that the past is louder than we think, and that when two performers carry a decade-old moment with grace, it gives the rest of us permission to remember without reopening old scripts. If this is where the sentence ends, it ends beautifully. If one day it continues, we'll be here for that too. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon and your heart where it's safe. All the details are in the lines between the lines. If you enjoyed being here with us tonight, don't forget to subscribe and share so you never miss what the stars aren't saying, because sometimes that says it all.